Professor Elliott, can you tell us how you got involved with the Ferrari Formula One racing team in the first place, and then how you took the whole initiative forwards?
Looking at an operation called the arterial switch, there were maybe factors that were more associated with the team or the people than what was wrong with the patient in manipulating the outcome. It was clear that the journey from the intensive care unit to the operating room was one of the highest risk components of the procedure. And there were all sorts of potential reasons for that, but primarily we'd spent, or the surgeon and his or her team had spent 6, 7, 8 hours looking after a tiny baby in the operating room. You kind of get to know how that baby works, and you want to move the child then to the intensive care unit, where a whole other team has to pick up the baton, if you like, and make sure that that child is safely connected to all the monitoring and that they know what's going to happen for the next few hours. The Ferrari stuff came because we'd been operating all night, one night on a Saturday, and then another operation on a Sunday morning, and suddenly there was the Grand Prix on the TV, and there was a pit stop, 6.8 seconds, and we thought, this looks exactly the same. And there's all these people with jobs to do who come in, do stuff, go away, and the car goes out very quickly. Well, they did it, and it looked a bit better than the way we do it, so we rang them up. Bernie Eccleston, I think, put us in touch with Ferrari, who were equally excited because, surprisingly, we were turned on by the sight of all these fast red cars going by, and they were quite turned on by these tiny little babies that we were operating on, thinking, my God, do you do that? So suddenly there was this kind of meshing excitement about what we did, and kind of professional interest in watching two teams doing something well, and both of them recognising the problems. And we went out to Maranello to watch them do pit stops and rehearse pit stops. Two main elements of the process were totally psychologically and culturally different. There were very, very much clearer definitions of individual roles and responsibilities and leadership over the process. So they go through all the sort of obvious things, then mentally rehearse the process, who's doing what, rehearse verbally, and then they go around again doing what could go wrong and what they would do if it did go wrong. So all this is happening verbally with someone taking notes. And I don't think we do any rehearsal in the health service. I mean, not as a convention. And what they're doing, both intellectually and as a company, is anticipating much more aggressively what might go wrong and what they'll do about it, because milliseconds will make a huge financial impact to that racing team.
So when you brought that experience back into the hospital, how did you go about applying it?
Well, first of all, we were lucky enough to work with a guy called Ken Catchpole, who's a human factors expert, who became the researcher who drove this process. And he helped us convert these concepts into something closer to science, where we had an observational study for a while about what we did, the intervention, which essentially created a more structured handover, clearly defined tasks, with a lot of explanation about what was involved, rehearsal, and then a post hoc event where we reanalyzed the data after we'd implemented it. And this whole thing has taken less time than it used to take, and the number of errors have been halved. And the cultural rub-off has been that we recognise the benefit of a bit of discipline around things. But we've learnt from this, and getting this out into the global community of knowledge, if you like, that it's true in industry. It's a high-risk time. And industrial groups have approached us to talk about this because they have identical problems.
Perhaps you could summarise for us the benefits that you got out of being engaged in the whole process.
Yes, I mean, there's obvious ones that it pays to be curious, and it pays to notice what's going on in other areas. So being aware of what's happening and not being frightened to ask. I'm very proud of my colleague Alan for his ability to phone people up and take them head on and say, we would like to talk to you. I think then there's the recognition that you always need to improve, and that complacency is dangerous.